Hey everybody, here's just a quick little video on how to present price. Everybody's going to have their own way of doing it, and you'll find a way that you feel comfortable with presenting options to clients. Some people will do it on the back of the lead. Some people will look up prices in the home when they first get to the home. Some people will casework prior to going to the home, where they'll look up quotes and things like that prior to their appointment, and they'll go in prepared already with quotes. There's no right or wrong way to do it. Here's one way if you just want to follow an example. So in this case, I have already looked up some quotes for this individual right here, and I'm going through the process in the home. I've already done the financial fire drill. I've already gotten the why out. I've shared my role and purpose, of course, at the beginning of the appointment. And now we're coming to the point where I've covered the think about it, and I'm about to present price. So for me, why this helps, and you can download this form off of the training site, but why this helps for me is it's a quick reminder anytime that this form comes out for me to cover the think about it. I actually call this in my own verbiage, I call this the think about it form because I want to remember that as soon as I bring this out, I want to cover the think about it. I want to either ask them, how long have you been thinking about this coverage, and get them to answer how long they've been thinking about coverage. Or I want to ask them, or say the think about it statement, like, guys, I've been doing this for long enough to know that when somebody tells me that they need to think about it or sleep on it or talk to their doctor about it or talk to their dog about it or pray, whatever it is, I understand what that means. Usually it means that it doesn't fit into the budget. And I just want to let you know that I'm here to help you find something that fits in the budget. And now I'm going to advocate for having some coverage is better than having no coverage, and get them to at least give me a little bit of an agreement that if it's too expensive, that they'll tell me it's too expensive, and they'll let me help them get coverage in something that's affordable. So I've covered the think about it. Now we're going to go into presenting price. In this example, I'm going to give you two examples. This example is a younger person. Let's say that this person is in their 50s. And let's say 40s or 50s, and I'm presenting them term coverage, or I'm looking at covering their entire mortgage. So we're going to say that this person's mortgage is $300,000 and they are in their 40s or 50s, let's just say 51, and I'm presenting them price. So I've already gone through and I've already gotten all of the prices. So I sat down and caseworked for 15-20 minutes on this client, popped up all my quoting websites, and the first thing that I looked at was Mutual of Omaha Term Life Express. And you can see I just did 3 levels. $300,000, which is the whole mortgage payoff, $150,000, which is the half mortgage payoff, and $50,000, which we're going to call critical period or critical period coverage for a younger person. I've also looked at Americo and their HMS 125 product for the term, and $300,000 for 30 years, 20 years, and 15 years. Same thing, $150,000, $50,000. I've looked at Forrester's Strong Foundations, which is their term product, $300,000, $150,000, and $50,000. I looked at United Home Life, or UHL's Simple Term 20 product. And it, just like it sounds, it's only for 20 years, so I can't look up a 30, 20, and a 15. It's only for 20. And the maximum coverage was $200,000, so I could only do $200,000, $150, and $50. And then with American Amicable, we looked up their Home Certainty product and looked up $300,000, $150,000, and $50,000. So why did I look up 30 years, 20 years, and 15 years for each individual product? Well, when I get in the home and I present somebody $300,000 for a 30-year term, maybe they want $300,000 in coverage, but the 30-year term makes it too expensive, but they would be completely fine with a 20-year term. Or maybe even they want the $300,000 in coverage, but they can afford a 15-year term instead of a 30-year term that more fits in their budget range, and they're comfortable with that for right now. Well, I don't want to have to fumble back through my iPad or my phone or my computer to generate these quotes while I'm sitting there and lose the momentum that we've gained in the appointment. I just want to have all those numbers readily available to be able to drop very quickly with them and find something that fits their budget. So in this case, I'm sitting in front of the client and I've told them, now I'm going to present you a few options and you're going to choose the one that you feel like is best for you, and we're going to submit an application to the carrier and start the process of getting you guys approved. And I got their buy-in on that, and maybe up here I've written the client, age 51, and now I'm going to start presenting price. So the first thing that I'm going to present is whole payoff, which is a $300,000 30-year term. So the $300,000 30-year term, I go through my pricing. It looks like Mutual of Omaha Term Life Express was $170 a month for a 30-year term. Americo HMS 125 was $188 a month, so more expensive. Foresters, it looks like, was $181 a month. United Home Life was $86 for a $200,000, but that's a 20-year term and it's not at $300,000, so probably not going to present that one. American Amicable was much more expensive than anybody for their term product, so looks like we're going to go with Mutual of Omaha as the cheapest price for a $300,000 30-year term. So I would say this is with Mutual of Omaha, and it is $170 per month. So I really only ever want the client to choose between two options at a time. We don't want to confuse them. We don't want to throw 35 options. I absolutely don't want them to see this. And I don't want them to get confused with all the numbers that I know what they mean, but they certainly don't know what it means. So I'm going to give them whole payoff and half payoff. So if this is too expensive, I'm going to give them their second option, which is half payoff. And a half payoff is $150,000 30-year term. Now, if we look at $150,000, Mutual of Omaha was $61. Looks like Americo was $98. Foresters was $53, so Foresters was actually less expensive. UHL for a 20-year term was $73, so it's much more expensive. American Amicable was $115, so that was the most expensive out of anybody. So let's just look at Foresters. In this case, is going to be the cheapest coverage. $150,000 30-year term is $53 a month. And this is $53 per month. Maybe that's a little bit more in the budget range. So I'm going to present these to them as either the whole mortgage payoff or the half mortgage payoff. And I'm going to stop. I'm personally not going to throw a third price out there right now until I get a feel for where they're at. So I want to slide this, I'm going to turn this around and I want to slide it over to them and I want to say which one of these feels like a better option for you. And then zip your mouth, don't say anything. Let them look at each other, let them debate about it, let them talk it out. Oh, sometimes they'll just go, okay, I want that one. I'll take the 170, that fits on my budget. Or sometimes they'll say, oh, I want the 53, that fits in my budget. Or maybe they'll say, I really want the $300,000 in coverage, but 170 isn't going to be feasible for me. To which now we'll drop down and go, okay, well, what if we did $300,000 for 20 years and it's $96 a month? Does that fit in the budget? And maybe they say yes, to which I'll cross off this 30 and I'll cross off this 170 and I'll write in 20 years, $96. Fits in the budget. That's what they want. Perfect. I may need to justify why a 20-year coverage will work for them rather than a 30-year coverage. Maybe we're talking about how it's going to cover them until they're 71, and by the time they're 71, they're done working and they're on a fixed income and their home is 2/3 paid off and they don't need as much protection. Maybe, we're doing that when we're talking about the $150,000, how $150,000 will protect them even if they die right now. They can always refi and their equity is going up, and in 10 or 15 years the house will be half paid off. And we can always justify why having some coverage is better than having no coverage. But we want to present two prices and let them sit on them and choose which one they want. We don't need to convince them. We don't need to sell at this point. Keep your mouth shut. Let them tell you how they're feeling. Let them tell you what they want. Most of the time, they're going to pick one and go, I want that one. Great. Start filling out an application. If you get to a point where $53 in this case is just too expensive, there's no way they can afford $53, now we're going to go into what's called the critical period. So I typically will take this sheet. I will do away with the whole mortgage payoff, and I will go back to two options. And we're going to do critical period. So now we're going to be talking about how much a $50,000 policy could impact them in an emergency. A $50,000 policy, if somebody were to pass away, would do X, Y, Z. It'll allow you to pay the mortgage for 4 or 5 years. It'll allow your wife to list the house and do some improvements and get it sold and not have to worry about it selling quickly to pay for the mortgage. You can get all of her equity out. You may want to make the point on a critical period coverage that perhaps it's a heart attack or a stroke, or they get diagnosed with cancer. And now we're talking about the impact that $50,000 of living benefits may have on them. So $50,000 from Mutual of Omaha is $32. $50,000 from Americo is $41. $50,000 from Foresters is $21. $50,000 from UHL is $38. $50,000 from American Amicable is $63. So I think in this case, it looks like the cheapest is Foresters again for $21. So I would do $50,000, and I call it an emergency policy. $30-year term, and that is $21. Now at this point, this is, in this particular case, it's reducing it down to the ridiculous. And if you haven't made an impact on them, that $21 a month fits in their budget, and it's worth it for $50,000 of coverage for the next 30 years. You're probably needing to look at the beginning half of your presentation and not the end half of your presentation for building value and making an impact and getting their why out and getting emotional. You may also want to look at the financial fire drill, where you should be figuring out what their discretionary income is, and should be pretty easy for you to make the point that they have $200 or $300 of discretionary income every month on paper, and $20 would fit. You can use this as a starting point. Guys, let's at least put this in place now, the $21 a month, and have $50,000 in coverage now. Make sure that you get approved. Once you get approved, we can always add more coverage later. We can always, put more coverage in place when the finances come into order, but at least you have something now, and you're not going to be completely wiped out if an emergency should happen. So that's how I would present. And again, I would turn this to them and I'd say, which one is more appealing to you? And usually at this point in time, they'll go, yeah, I can do 21. Great. And then we start filling out the application, whether it's paper or it's electronic. So now let's talk about what we do with an older person. Because with an older person, and we're just going to say that this person is 70, with an older person, we are not going to be able to get them as much coverage. Well, that's not technically true. We can get them coverage through 4 or 5 combined different carriers, and their premium may be as much as their mortgage payment. But for most older people that are in their late 60s, early 70s and on, we're going to be looking at whole life products. And whole life products have limits to them when how much money that they can be worth. So Mutual of Omaha, the max is $40,000 for their Living Promise product. With Americo, their Eagle Premier product has a $30,000 maximum coverage benefit. United Home Life Express Issue Premier has a $50,000 max benefit. So they all have different levels that they can offer, but the point is, if you go see an older person who has a $300,000 mortgage, and there are a lot of people in their 70s and 80s that are getting 30-year mortgages, believe it or not, you're not going to be able to cover their mortgage most of the time without it being just astronomically expensive for them every month. So what I like to do here, same process. I've covered the Think About It. I got my Think About It form. I want to do max coverage, middle coverage, and minimum coverage or critical period. So for the max coverage, what we're going to look at is price again here. So it looks like Mutual of Omaha was $216 for $40,000. Americo Eagle Premier was $217, but only for $30,000. UHL was $271. Transamerica was $219. American Amicable was $221. So again, here we're going to go with Mutual of Omaha Living Promise. So we're going to do max coverage first, which is a $40,000 death benefit. Mutual of Omaha is $216 per month. So when we go to middle coverage, I'm just going to cut that in half. I'm just going to do $20,000. So the $20,000, Mutual of Omaha is $112, UHL is $163, Trans Am is $118, and American Amicable is $117. So looks like Mutual of Omaha wins again. And they are $112. Perfect. So at this point, we have an older client. We're saying, hey, look, the maximum amount of coverage that we can get you with one carrier is $216. If they are comfortable with $216 and they've got it like that and they just want more coverage, then of course we can offer them Mutual of Omaha for $40,000 plus American Amicable for $40,000, and maybe they're comfortable with a $400 or $500 a month payment to have $80,000 in coverage. Maybe they're completely fine with that, and you feel free to offer that to them. If $40,000 at $216 doesn't fit in the budget, and $20,000 at $112 doesn't fit in the budget, then we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to take this and I'm going to fold it right in thirds, and I'm going to offer them critical period coverage. Usually at this point in time, I'm going to want to explain what a critical period coverage could mean. There's amazing audio files on Symmetry on the SoundCloud channel. Eris and Cicely Newsom doing critical questions for critical period. There's a couple great ones for presenting the critical period in the home and understanding there's a number of ways to do it. You can present that $10,000 is going to pay their mortgage for the next 3 or 4 years. So if somebody passes away, depending on their mortgage amount, your wife or your husband will be able to afford the mortgage for 2 years or 24 months or however long you want to put it. You also could be a little bit more general about it and say, $10,000 could do a lot. It could help get this house listed and get it sold without losing your equity. You could say that the $10,000 is for burial expenses. You can say that the $10,000 can be used for anything, as long as you're using their emotion of why they wanted this coverage and what they told you in their why. Use that a little bit and explain how big of an impact $10,000 could mean to them. So we're gonna look at $10,000. It looks like Mutual of Omaha is 61, Americo 73, United Home Life is 62, Trans Am was 73, and American Amicable was 67. So again, Mutual of Omaha for this particular client seems like it's the cheapest. So I'm going to say $10,000, and again, I'm going to call it an emergency policy. and it's going to be $61 a month. Now you may choose, if you're using the route of how many months of the mortgage it will pay for. If you're saying that their mortgage is $1,000 a month and it's going to pay for the mortgage for 10 months, then you could write 10 months expenses down on the bottom. You could write critical period if you want to write critical period. Sometimes people are explaining the critical period as the time when people lose their home. So it's really up to you and how you want to deliver it. Here's one way to deliver it, but I just wanted to show you at least how you go from case working to presenting those prices in the home. Again, you probably don't want the client to see all these and get confused. It's not like you want to hide things from them. Hopefully your client at this point doesn't believe that you're charging them the most expensive option, and hopefully you've built enough trust to know that they trust that you're there to help them. So this is just a couple ways to present price, and hopefully you guys can get out there and make some impacts on some families.